Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there? Hello, everyone. It is Thursday. Today's Thursday, February 8th, 2018, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm Papa Bear. Thanks for listening. This is LateNightInTheMidlands.com. We're also at LNMRadioNetwork.com and at WCET 101.7 FM Columbia Talk. We have been going, or I've been going on about this FISA stuff here for a while now. And the FISA stuff, of course, is everything, all the dirt they got on Trump, this, that, and the other. And everybody's doubting it. You've got counter memos, and honestly, there was a coup going on. There is still an active coup attempt. To kind of jump right into things here, Fox News, Lou Dobbs had a conversation with Ambassador Bolton on the attacks on Trump, and this is about a 3.5-minute deal here. I'm going to let you listen to it.
Former UN Ambassador John Bolton, American Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow, Fox Business contributor. Great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
I cannot believe this guy. He's emulating what he did in May, following President Trump around instead of apologizing, attacking the president.
Yeah. Look, he doesn't know what to do with himself now that he's no longer president.
Could I send him a few suggestions?
Yeah, I'm sure we could. He's engaged in what it appears the Mueller investigation wants to go after the Trump administration on, a violation of the famous Logan Act, conducting his own foreign policy overseas, no less. I mean, this is another demonstration of the hypocrisy of what we're facing in Washington.
This is subversion. This is beyond just ignorance. It's beyond opposition. It's beyond resistance. This is outright subversion. There has never been a president who has ever done this to his predecessor in American history.
Well, I think it's part and parcel of the complete unwillingness of the opposition to acknowledge they lost the election. They're still unable to process it.
But why do we keep carrying that around? I mean, John, what I'm asking is, who gives a damn what they acknowledge? It is the reality. If they refuse to recognize reality, then let them go get medication, treatment, whatever is required. But let's move the republic ahead.
Well, that's what we should do.
And that's what President Trump is doing.
They're trying to prove the administration is illegitimate, and
illegitimate.
That's what you can say.
They are the ones who are. I mean, this Leandra English at the Consumer.
As the Wall Street Journal said, this is the first attempted coup d'état in American history. I mean, it's a mini coup d'état. But it goes right along with the idea that they should have won the election.
Transfer of power is not minor.
Yeah, and one recalls the famous scene in the debate where I think it was Chris Wallace asked both candidates, "If you lose, will you accept the result?"
Don't tell me. Did Hillary lie?
Well, look, remember William Safire, the great columnst for the New York Times, who 20 years ago called Hillary a congenital liar. 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that it was a persuasive case he made, as usual, when Bill got a hold of the facts and the language. But this should not be a surprise to anyone. Yet the national media has moved to a different place. The national media has become not only left-wing, but it's a closed feedback loop. And it is broadcasting only to those who support one point of view, and that is the leftist view. And the Clintons, I think it's immaterial whether it's the Clintons, although they play a major role in it, or any other part of the left.
Yeah. Well, I think the real threat to the Trump administration remains the Mueller investigation. Dianne Feinstein gave away the story yesterday, not that it wasn't obvious that they're seeking an obstruction of justice conspiracy
but that's
here.
such a ridiculous charge. It's because they've exhausted the illegitimacy charge. The Russian collusion has been rejected. All they have left is obstruction of justice.
But it's dangerous for this reason.
Because Mueller's in the special counsel.
What they've got here is they've created a category of crimes that only exist because of the investigation. Lying to the FBI, perjury, subornation of perjury, destruction or alteration of documents or other evidence, obstruction of justice itself. They could indict people for those crimes if they were investigating their Christmas card list.
If Speaker Ryan, former UN Ambassador John.
So, for the most part, there is a mini coup going on. It's happening. Well, it is happening now. Okay. So, in case you're wondering, yeah, there's a whole lot going down. Trey Gowdy went on Fox News. Trey Gowdy, congressman. Okay. And of course, he announced his retirement. But Gowdy says Martha McCallum asked him why he has the jurisdiction to investigate anything he wants in relation to Trump, under the guise of the Russia probe. And believe it or not, Gowdy says, well, I wouldn't blame Mueller. I'd blame whoever drafted the jurisdiction and the charter that empowered him. And if you look at it, it says matters that may arise from the investigation. What in the heck does that mean? I mean, does that include a bank robbery in Topeka, Kansas? And Martha asked, did that language come from Rod Rosenstein? And Gowdy says, yes, ma'am. So basically, it's like anything that might come up while something's going on, Trey Gowdy says, I think Bob Mueller is a former U.S. attorney and a former FBI director who has an otherwise really distinguished legal career. Even if a prosecutor wanted to get someone, you'd have to have the facts to do it. Okay, says we've seen special counsels in the past leave their purview, and the investigation has gone on for a long time. And the next thing you know, you're investigating a Monica Lewinsky case when the president didn't even know her when the special counsel began his work. So you don't have any fear of that here? Martha McCallum asked Gowdy, referencing the special counsel who investigated former President Bill Clinton. Gowdy responded by saying he believes special counsel Mueller has already gone off course, and said the person to blame for that would be Rod Rosenstein because he's the mastermind behind giving Mueller broad jurisdiction. And he's absolutely right. Lieberman, he talks about incivility. The lack of civility in our government threatens to do something that we as a nation would never allow terrorists to do. And he's absolutely right. Oh, speaking of the civility, this, that, and the other, and who's offensive and stuff like that, Antifa disrupts an LGBT parade. They claim that gay people are offensive to Muslims. Can you imagine? Now, let me read this. This comes from Squawker, all right? Whether we agree with their beliefs or not, gay pride parades, for the most part, are, well, gay. Happy, bright, enthusiastic, peaceful. They march around with rainbow flags, they wear really weird clothing, and tell everybody how proud they are to be gay. Annoying? Well, it is if you feel as though you're shoving that agenda down your throat. But these marches tend to keep it fairly peaceful. When you start putting Sweden, Muslims, and Antifa into the mix, however, you have a recipe for disaster. Recently in Stockholm, Sweden, a gay pride event was held that caused a bit of controversy. Everything was going great until someone made a wrong turn. Specifically, those participating in the march entered a predominantly Muslim territory. What happened next is a little confusing, to say the least. Antifa, which is supposed to be short for anti-fascists, they hit the scene. And they were not pleased with the locations that the gay pride marches were choosing. Why? Well, because it was living proof that Muslims don't support gays. Instead, in their own countries, they throw them off bridges and stone them to death. One Swedish Antifa member, clearly supporting communism, had this to say in an interview promoted by VPN. It's a propagation against the Muslim population here. I think it's a private thing, what gays do in the bed. Okay? Yeah, that attire sure makes me want to subscribe to Antifa, that's for sure. Anyway, Antifa began calling out those in the march, saying they were fascist and in the wrong. The reporter who covered the event noted how some people were saying it was a PR stunt aimed at giving or dividing the communities. But isn't Antifa supposed to be pro-gay and pro-Muslim? It seems that when they finally realized the tension between each community, they got triggered by the idea of having to choose one side. It's either one side or the other. So which one was going to be the enemy? Okay. Who would have to be labeled as the Nazis and fascists? So now, according to Antifa, gay people are racist neo-Nazis who only march in Muslim areas to be offensive to their opposition. Okay? More and more gays are being red-pilled, so to speak, with Milo Yiannopoulos leading the revolution. After this incident, I wouldn't be surprised if even greater numbers turned away from far-left movements and joined the right side of political and social issues. Only time will tell. But, we still have enough red pills to go around. Red pills. Kind of reminds me of homeopathy, huh? Since I'm ADD and can't stick to one subject, let's jump right into homeopathy a little bit. Is the FDA trying to ban over-the-counter homeopathy? This is an article from greenmedinfo.com. It says, when the FDA announced a draft guidance in December 2017 stating its latest intentions regarding the regulation of homeopathic products, it became clear the agency had paid little attention to the concerns of the homeopathic community and practitioners, consumers, patients, and manufacturers. It turns out the FDA's public hearing held in 2015, during which numerous representatives of homeopathic interests from across the U.S. and around the globe gave overwhelmingly positive testimony as to the safety, efficacy, and unique nature of homeopathic medicines, was just a pretense designed to give the appearance that it was taking the public's concerns into that account, hiding behind rhetoric emphasizing concerns for the safety of consumers. FDA is proposing a new risk-based enforcement approach to homeopathic drug products that have the greatest potential to cause risk to patients. FDA is intending to launch a two-pronged initiative that exaggerates the risks associated with homeopathic products and denies the existing evidence in support of their safety and effectiveness. So the FDA has chosen to use a very small number of unsubstantiated accounts of adverse events supposedly associated with homeopathic products in order to justify overregulation of the industry as a whole, failing to acknowledge that the current regulatory framework, the compliance policy, compliance policy guide, 400.400, adopted in 1988, is more than sufficient to accomplish its stated goal of protecting the public from potential harm. FDA appears bent on tearing that policy down in favor of either a new and unnecessary stringent policy or no replacement policy at all. No policy at all would likely result in confusion about FDA's expectations of homeopathic manufacturers and could provide opportunity for FDA to exploit the lack of clear regulatory bounds. They said, what is clear is that FDA has ignored homeopathic community's request to update this guidance. By withdrawing CPG 400-400, the FDA is removing the only clear guidelines that have served to help the FDA, the homeopathic manufacturers, and the public to understand the policies surrounding the marketing and labeling of homeopathic products. The AIH is very concerned that the withdrawal of this document will create a situation where anything can be labeled homeopathic and muddy the waters around what actually is homeopathic. The AIH is also concerned that withdrawal from the guidance would allow the FDA to act capriciously and to interpret the new guideline more broadly than they should be. If the FDA is unhappy with the current CPG 400-400, we advise they amend it to make it better, more comprehensive guideline, not one with less clear instructions that could result in abuses from both manufacturers and regulators. Only the public will suffer if this happens. So, you can see what's going on there. They're basically hell-bent against allowing people to take homeopathic remedies. Homeopathic remedies, believe me, they are safe, they're natural, and I'll tell you, they're safer in a lot of communities. To give you an idea, Arizona foster care, okay, their foster care system was revealed as a pedophile ring. Let me explain this one. This came from medicalkidnap.com. The state of Arizona, which has the infamous reputation of removing the highest percentage of children in the U.S. from their homes and families through Child Protective Services, has now also been exposed as having a very corrupt foster care network that includes pedophile rings where young children are imprisoned in state-approved foster homes and trafficked to pedophiles. In a developing story out of the military town of Sierra Vista, Arizona, the home of Fort Huachuca. Anyway, David Frodzam, sounds like a good name, Frodsham, Frodzam, a former commander with the Department of Defense in Afghanistan, who was discharged from duty due to sexual harassment, behavior, and an assessment by the military that he had unalterable personality disorder, has been arrested and convicted of operating a pornographic pedophile ring based out of his state-approved foster home. Health Impact News first reported on the charges brought against David Frodzam and his wife, who were state-approved foster parents last year in 2017, with the story of the young child Devani, who was seized from her family just days before her second birthday and placed into Frodzam's state-approved foster home, where she was allegedly raped repeatedly and trafficked as part of an organized pornographic pedophile ring. After David Frodzam was arrested due to a federal investigation, Devani was placed into another state-approved foster home where 80% of her body was burned by scalding water, forcing the amputation of her toes. Okay, local news in Arizona covered this story, but Health Impact News reached out to the biological mother of Devani and told her side of the story, revealing that Devani never should have been taken out of her home in the first place, where she was loved by her mother, who repeatedly tried to report the abuse she was seeing in her daughter with no results. Another foster child who was adopted by the Frodzams and put into their pornographic pedophile ring has turned 18 and come forward to reveal details of years of horrible torture and sexual trafficking while suing the state of Arizona for damages of $15 million. Okay? Referred to as John Doe to protect his identity, the former foster child imprisoned and tortured in the Frodzam's foster home has filed a notice of claim for damages of $15 million and served it to the following parties: Mark Brunovich, Attorney General, State of Arizona; Gregory McKay, Director, Arizona Department of Child Safety; Michael Traylor, Director, Arizona Department of Economic Security; Deb Nishikita, Director of Sierra Vista Office, Arizona Department of Economic Security; Naomi Ochoa, Licensing Worker, Arizona Department of Economic Security; and James Robinson, Manager, Arizona Department of Economic Security, among others. But what this lawsuit specifies as the basis for the claim is that John Doe is a victim of the state of Arizona's failed child protection practices and policies. John Doe, who is now 18, suffered over 12 years of shocking physical and sexual abuse because of the state's refusal to protect him. John Doe was born in September of 1999, and before his 4th birthday was placed in foster care. The Frozums were approved by the state to have John Doe in their home in 2004, and John Doe was subsequently adopted by David and Barbara Frozum in 2012. The Frozums were licensed foster care parents with the state of Arizona from 2002 till January 2015. The Frozum license was not suspended until David Frozum was arrested at the DES office for felony drunk driving with toddlers in the vehicle. The state and its employees ignored actual notice of the abuse of John Doe and numerous warning signs that the Frozum home was dangerous. The state did not remove John Doe until ICE, a federal agency within the Department of Homeland Security, arrested David Frozum for operating a pornographic pedophile ring based in the home. ICE identified John Doe as a victim of Frozum's pedophilia. John Doe suffered sexual, physical, and emotional abuse for over 12 years in his home, despite numerous red flags of abuse and neglect. This abuse was no secret to CPS or DCS and well documented, yet no investigations were undertaken. Okay. Hello, Arizona. Look out. I've only touched on this. There's a lot of stuff here. This Afghan pedophiles get a free pass from the U.S. military. I mean, there's a pedophilia network, human trafficking network going on all over there in the Middle East is where most of it is happening. So it's crazy. It's crazy. You know what? I think I like talking about this other stuff instead. DACA, illegal immigrants. You know, the child pedophilia thing just drives me nuts. Oh, goodness, I don't think hanging is good enough. Oh, man, I don't want to get wound up this morning. House Democratic lawmakers are reportedly enraged at House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi's decision to give an unprecedented 8-hour speech on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday, saying that she hurt many of her Democratic colleagues who are running in 2018. So she spends 8 hours standing to do what? Fighting against some illegal children that were here. But when you talk about the benefits that people are getting and how much better the quality of life is for the people who are here, for our real citizens, you know, she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Unemployment is at the lowest it's ever been in the Hispanic and black communities. Okay? Let's not stand about that. What do you stand for? What do you stand for? That's the bottom line. I mean, if you're not going to stand for things like that, you pretty much don't stand for anything. Anyway, Pelosi vowed to stand and speak until Republicans gave in to her demands and protect illegal aliens who were brought to the United States by their parents as minors. However, Pelosi's speech appears to have just deepened the fracture in the Democratic Party over the issue of immigration. Politico interviewed almost a dozen House Democrats, several of whom only spoke on condition of anonymity so they could give honest responses about their opinions of Pelosi's stunt. Many agreed that she was trying to shore up support with the progressive base, who feel Democrats have failed to do enough to protect Dreamers. By agreeing to the spending gaps deal, Representative Louis Gutierrez, Democrat Illinois, and others argued, Democrats gave up all their leverage to force Republicans into serious negotiations to shield Dreamers from deportation. Others believe her 8-hour filibuster-style speech just made life more difficult for many Democrats. Some centrist-minded Democrats said Pelosi's day-long protest could, by calling attention to the failure to provide relief for Dreamers, make it that much harder for vulnerable members to vote for the budget deal. This stunt had nothing to do with protecting vulnerable members who have to take a difficult vote, said one moderate lawmaker who asked not to be named. Working out this deal and then saying she's not going to vote for it? Come on, she was at the table. All the House Democrats are supportive of Dreamers, but several members, particularly centrists, are wary of using the immigration issue as a campaign cudgel, worried it could derail Democrats' chances of taking back the House. Guterres, who is retiring at the end of this year, slammed Pelosi, saying, "There are all kinds of ways, I assure you, that leadership exercises its influence, the least of which is a floor speech." I'm glad to see Guterres go. I hope they don't vote him back in. Pelosi's speech also pits her directly against Senate Democrats who reached a budget deal which did not include provisions on immigration. Another House Democrat told Bloomberg, "Many of our members are furious. We've spent at least, or the last 3 weeks, insisting that we don't want to shut down government over DACA." And she essentially made the whole thing about it. Virtually everyone trying to win seats outside of California feels she has hurt their chances. Here's one that says, "Many of our members are furious. We've spent the last 3 weeks insisting that we don't want to shut down the government over DACA." Sahil Kapoor, a message from the House Democrat lawmaker who was less than thrilled with Pelosi's marathon speech on Dreamers. So, yeah, she's 8 hours of that. Unreal, unbelievable. FBI informant on Uranium One breaks silence. An informant who spent years gathering information on the Russian energy and uranium market industry for the FBI met staff members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, House Oversight, and House Intelligence Committees on Wednesday. He gave explosive testimony on his years as an undercover informant providing information to the FBI on Russian criminal networks operating in the United States. He also contends in his testimony and written briefs to the FBI that Russia attempted to hide its ongoing aid to help sustain Iran's nuclear industry. At the time, the Obama administration had approved the sale of 20% of U.S. uranium mining rights to Russia. William D. Campbell, an American businessman, provided extensive information on other counterintelligence issues to the FBI for decades, and he had also provided information to the CIA on various issues during his time overseas. For several years, my relationship with the CIA consisted of being debriefed after foreign travel, Campbell noted in his testimony, which was obtained by this reporter. Gradually, the relationship evolved into the CIA tasking me to travel to specific countries to obtain specific information. In the 1990s, I developed a working relationship with Kazakhstan and Russia in their nuclear energy industries. When I told the CIA of this development, I was turned over to FBI counterintelligence agents. The informant's attorney, Victoria Tonsing, partner at the firm of DeGenova and Tonsing, said the following. Mr. Campbell testified for over 4 hours until he answered every question from 3 congressional committees, the Senate Judiciary Committee, House Oversight, and House Intelligence Committees. He recounted numerous times that the Russians bragged that the Clintons' influence in the Obama administration would ensure CFIUS approval for Uranium One. And he was right. The recent revelations over the past year regarding Campbell's undercover work for the FBI sparked a Department of Justice investigation into the Obama administration's handling of the sale of U.S. uranium mining assets to Russia. On Wednesday, he shared with the committee information he provided to the FBI and has in the past described his frustration with the Obama administration's failure to stop Russia's nuclear giant from purchasing 20% of American mining assets. Campbell testified before numerous congressional investigators that this extensive counterintelligence work on Russia and stated that during his time as an informant, he obtained information that Russia was continuing to aid the Iranian government. Goodness me. All kinds of stuff coming down. It's all coming out. It's all falling apart. I love it. Huh. We'll be right back.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
The L&M Radio Network offers a chat room for you, the listener, to connect with others whom are interested in the topics and guests that the L&M Radio Network brings to you. During the live shows, the hosts will even visit the chat room and chat with you, the listener. Click on the big red Chat and Listen button at the top of the website and join us. No subscription is needed at either lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
Music by Ben Sound at bensound.com. Had to put that plug in there. Goodness, we got a bit of snow last night, and they're outside working around. It sounds like they're tearing down the house. My goodness, it's crazy out there. It's time to put out the plugs. LateNightInTheMidlands.com. You will find us there. Also at LNMRadioNetwork.com. You can chat and listen on both. Listen to us on iTunes and on the Paranormal Radio app. And also at WCET 101.7 FM, Columbia Talk. Our mothership. My goodness. And let's get back at it. My goodness, we got all kinds of stuff going on out here. Adam Schiff. What happens when the Schiff hits the fan, right? Yeah. Adam Schiff, it seems as though he got pranked. Good old Adam Schiff got pranked. A couple of Russian comedians decided to give him a call and tell him that they offered him nude pictures of President Trump. This is from Downtrend. Yesterday we reported on Democrat witch hunter and chief Russian conspiracy theorist Adam Schiff's getting epically trolled by 2 Russian pranksters promising him naked pictures of President Trump. Schiff was practically drooling over the prospect of such damaging compromat on his hated enemy and engaged the jokers for around 8 minutes, promising them that he would put his staff onto this once the call was over. But like the Russian collusion hoax, it too was a scam. One that left Shifty Schiff with a good amount of egg drop on his bug-eyed face. Let's put it that way. Wonder why the ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee would even take this call in the first place, let alone to allow his partisan vendetta to override common sense. You would think someone calls you from Russia and you're on the Intelligence Committee. I think we would now call it a lack of intelligence committee. To fall for something like that, unbelievable. Well, Representative Matt Gaetz, he says Adam Schiff should step aside from leadership role in House Intel's Russia probe, and he should. He should. He says the House Intelligence Committee ranking member Adam Schiff should step aside from his leadership role in the panel's Russia inquiry. Schiff has spearheaded the Democratic opposition to the Republican memo from the committee released to the public last week, which details allegations of surveillance abuse by the government. Gaetz says the California Democrat should back away because he allegedly sought damaging information about President Trump from what he thought was a Ukrainian politician, and because he appeared on Kremlin-funded RT back in 2013. Here you've got Adam Schiff engaging with Ukrainians trying to dig up dirt on the president with seemingly no interest in whether or not the information is true or false, or doctored, Gaetz told Fox News. If you use the same standard that's been applied to the Republicans, to Adam Schiff, he should have no role on the Intelligence Committee as a lead on the issue. He was referring to a report this week from The Atlantic that said Schiff received a prank call from the Russian comedians posing as Ukrainian politician Andriy Parubiy, who offered potentially explosive information about Trump's visit to Russia during the Miss Universe pageant in 2013. Though Schiff's office claims it suspected the April 2017 call was fake and contacted the appropriate authorities, the Daily Mail reported that a member of Schiff's staff continued correspondence with the pranksters by way of email, seeking the damaging material on Trump. Gaetz also said that the fact that he goes on Russia Today, the Russian-sponsored television channel, to talk about our intelligence system certainly indicates that Adam Schiff should step aside. He's kind of right. If you're going to talk about any kind of strategy like that, then yeah, he's probably right. Oh, goodness. Senate committee releases bombshell docs on FBI's Hillary investigation. Twice failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's email server fiasco back in the spotlight as Senate Homeland Committee just released bombshell documents about the investigation. Here's the deal. This is from the Washington Examiner. The Senate Homeland Security Committee released troves of documents Wednesday highlighting the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of private email servers. The near 3-year investigation was spearheaded by Chairman Ron Johnson and specifically highlights text messages between FBI counterintelligence official Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page. The texts between the two, who worked on the Clinton probe and were engaged in an extramarital affair, show they talked about serving to protect the country from the menace of enablers and then presidential nominee Donald Trump. According to the documents released by Johnson, the two talked about then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and how they knew Clinton would not face criminal charges for her private email server, even before the FBI had interviewed the former Secretary of State. So, number one, Hillary Clinton wanted to be the president in 2007. Okay, Hillary's ambitions to be president started long ago. She ran for president in the 2008 cycle. Remember, that's where everything was given to Obama, right? In 2009, after losing to Obama, Hillary became Obama's Secretary of State. She stayed in that post until 2013. March 2015, the Hillary email scandal breaks. Hillary was using an unapproved, unsecure server and devices to communicate. She was using a private email account. Classified information was being sent through that email server and devices, including when Hillary was abroad. All of that is illegal. As 2015 unfolds, it becomes clear to the FBI and DOJ that President Barack Obama was communicating with Hillary using her non-State Department email. Obama was using an email and a name that masked who he was. That had to be known to authorities long before March of 2015, given that it occurred prior to 2013. As Andrew McCarthy points out in his recent article, there was no chance that the DOJ was going to indict Hillary because that would have required implicating President Obama. That was never going to happen. From thereafter, DOJ officials acted with the understanding, however, illegal in mind. Hillary will undoubtedly come out at some point and blame someone else again for her crimes. During a recent speaking engagement at Georgetown University, Clinton made one of the dumbest statements of all time. In a nutshell, global warming is racist. Global warming is everything now. It's racist, it's sexist, it's, I don't know, goodness. What was it somebody said? Global warming is racist. Yeah, racist. You wonder where people come from. You really wonder. I bet, I look through Facebook and I watch some of the posts, and I'm thinking there are still some people out there who, I don't know, I can't tell if there are any brain cells sparking. Maybe just enough to go ahead and push some letters on a keyboard, or parrot, but that's as far as it goes. Anyway, Dick Morris says Rosenstein threatened Intelligence Committee members with subpoenas. 3 weeks ago, Deputy Attorney let's start this one more time. I need to get my teeth. Forgive my whistling here. 3 weeks ago, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein threatened House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes with subpoenas of their text messages and phone calls if the committee continued to expose partisanship, bias, and corruption at the Justice Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, saying he was tired of dealing with the Intelligence Committee. He threatened to use the panoply of his powers as Deputy Attorney General to get rid of this pestilential nuisance. It's a crime to threaten a member of Congress for exercising a constitutionally protected right. 18 United States Code 242 provides that it's a crime for a government official to use his office to threaten anyone, including a member of Congress, for exercising a constitutional protected right and other similar abuse of power. The House and Senate Permanent Committees on Intelligence were established in 1977 after decades of abuse of the powers of intelligence agencies in the Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford administrations were uncovered. These activities ranged from assassinations of foreign leaders in the Congo and Chile to secretly subsidizing political parties in the European democracies, such as Italy, to blackmail and extort. Okay? Operating without oversight or constraint, the CIA and FBI routinely trampled both on civil liberties and civilized norms as they sought to fight leftist regimes abroad and left-wing demonstrators at home. The committees are bound by strict secrecy, and in general, their members have hewed to these standards. But the bounds of fairness and objectivity have recently been stretched beyond recognition by the countervailing contentions of the two parties in the Russia-Trump dossier FBI uranium scandals. so shocked by the government's use of surveillance powers of the national security agencies to spy on the transition team and administration appointments of the incoming Trump administration was House Committee Chairman Devin Nunes and the Republican committee majority that they drafted a memorandum detailing the flimsy basis for the surveillance and showing how the Justice Department had hidden certain key facts from the FISA court that permitted the surveillance. It recounted how the dossier on which the FISA warrant was based was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. The committee was further angered by the fact that Rosenstein withheld this piece of information from the committee, even as it was litigating to enforce a subpoena to discover the sources of the dossier funding. Yet Rosenstein and his partisan allies in the Justice Department knew all along that the dossier was indeed funded by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party. As a result, tensions between Rosenstein and the committee have heightened and seemed to boil over in the hearing 3 weeks ago. While no transcripts of the hearing are available, Intelligence Committee transcripts are rarely made public. 2 independent observers reported the heated comments of Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. If indeed Rosenstein did threaten the committee with increased surveillance and a probe of its emails, texts, and other internal communications, it would likely constitute a violation of law. That's Dick Morris. Dick Morris is pretty close. He's pretty much an insider there. He spends a lot of time on Fox News, does some pretty good reporting. John McCain is back in the news. John McCain's legacy is demolished overnight after alarming scandals are exposed. This goes back, way back to when he was, actually before he was a POW. For years, John McCain used that veteran POW story and veteran status to rise to political prominence. For decades, portraying himself as a Vietnam War hero. His prestige as an American war hero afforded him the opportunity to become United States Senator, where this facade allowed him to seamlessly bury scandals that would ruin any normal person's career. But unfortunately for McCain, 12 nasty skeletons from the past are now emerging from the closet. Sure, to solidify his position as the crookedest politician in American history, just in time before he dies, and nauseating tributes are made to his heroic life as a public servant. Number 1, John McCain killed 134 of his fellow sailors aboard the USS Forrestal aircraft carrier in 1967. John McCain graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1958, where he became commissioned as a second lieutenant naval aviator. His naval career was disastrous from the beginning, where he crashed 2 Navy jets and was involved in nearly fatal mishaps shortly after graduation. But his father and grandfather were both 4-star admirals. McCain got preferential treatment and was able to continue to serve despite being a horrible pilot. But tragically, McCain's cocky actions as a young pilot while aboard the USS Forrestal aircraft carried on June 31st, 1967, would go on to kill 134 sailors, in a horrifying incident where his involvement was scrubbed from the Navy's official records. According to eyewitnesses that day, whose accounts were predictably buried by the Navy due to John McCain's familial ties to 2 4-star admirals, McCain decided to be a show-off by doing a wet start off his jet. This reckless maneuver makes fuel build up in the engine before the plane is started. The result is a flame erupting from the tail of the plane that's accompanied by a startling amount of noise. After McCain started his engine in this manner, the electrical surge of this maneuver subsequently caused the accidental launch of a powerful Zuni rocket across the carrier's deck that hit 2 other parked planes that were packing 1,000-pound highly explosive bombs. The fire then caused a chain reaction of bombs to detonate, causing explosions that went several decks below. The ensuing explosions nearly sank the 82,000-ton U.S. aircraft carrier, with the fire fatally consuming 134 sailors aboard the Forrestal. Number 2, McCain was exposed earlier this year of being the recipient of millions of dirty Saudi and Iranian money. This money was dumped into his McCain Institute by way of the Daily Caller. The McCain Institute, created in 2012 with an $8.7 million donation of funds remaining from McCain's unsuccessful 2008 presidential campaign, refused money to disclose the amounts it received from its biggest donors, who gave $100,000 or more. The Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia, for instance, is identified as giving $100,000 or more on the institution's website. In reality, the Saudis gave $1 million. Number 3, John McCain is a George Soros puppet and is directly funded by the billionaire globalist. I can leave that one there. Number 4, McCain led massive government cover-up of the Vietnam POWs he was in captivity with that President Nixon left behind. This is a dirty deal. McCain was sent on a bombing mission over Hanoi in October of '67 when he was shot down and captured by the North Vietnamese, where he goes on to be a prisoner of war until 1973. What most people don't know is the massive government scandal that McCain helped hide, as he'd go on to, for decades, to tirelessly work to bury stunning information about the American prisoners over in Vietnam who didn't like him, didn't return home. Using his position as a senator, McCain would be behind the scenes quietly pushing and sponsoring federal laws that would keep the most damning information about our POWs buried through classified documents. John Songbird McCain. Anyway, what happened? Only 591 in Hanoi were released, among them Navy combat pilot John McCain. What happened was, after the war, President Nixon promised the Vietnamese a $3.25 billion in post-war construction aid without any political conditions. But there was a catch to the promise, where Nixon had included that the Congress would have to approve the funds. The approval never happened. Furious that the American government had double-crossed him, Hanoi decided to keep the remaining hundreds of American prisoners because their ransom money never came. The CIA whistleblowers said that the government wanted to keep these missing men a secret because, as more years passed, it became more and more difficult for the government to admit that it knew about the prisoners that were left behind. Years later, CIA officials admitted their intel indicating that the remaining POWs were eventually executed by Vietnamese, and there were no longer useful bargaining chips. Number 5, after being released as a POW, McCain discovered his wife had been disfigured in a car accident and dumped her for younger, prettier women. You know how that goes, right? We all do that stuff. Number 6, McCain committed a felony and worked with foreign government spies to overthrow Trump. The faked Russian dossier that BuzzFeed and CNN infamously circulated after the election, well, he was behind it. It was compiled and put together by former British spy Christopher Steele and his London firm, who later sold it to Trump's political opponents. According to court documents in a British lawsuit, lawyers for Steele revealed that McCain was one of the only people in Washington, D.C. who had copies of the full document before it was circulated among liberal journalists and then published by BuzzFeed. Gotta like McCain, huh? Number 7, McCain met with ISIS terrorists during the Obama administration and funneled money to them. The Free Syrian Army. McCain secretly met with Muslim terrorists in Syria, where he helped get ISIS into power after building up the Free Syrian Army. McCain was directly linked to the London Bridge attack after it was discovered that terrorist Rashid Redouane came directly from the McCain's Free Speech Army. The Free Syrian Army, sorry. Number 8, McCain is a neo-Nazi supporter, funded by radical Nazi groups. Of course, if he's funded by Soros, he's got to be funded by the rest of them too. Number 9, McCain tried to get an entire class of newly commissioned officers to defy Trump. At the end of October, McCain gave the commencement speech for the U.S. Naval Academy, where he gave the class of newly commissioned officers a startling anti-American order to defy President Trump. McCain began his speech by predictably taking a swipe at Trump and his entire administration, but later in the speech is when McCain proved to the world just how many brain cells he apparently has lost with his recent brain cancer diagnosis, where he made the asinine demand that these newly commissioned officers should not put America first and should try to blend with other countries such as Europe. Number 10, John McCain cheated on his wife for 35 years with the hot young lobbyist. Yeah, we knew, 35 years. Yeah, we knew that, right? John McCain joined a long list of sexual perverts being exposed in recent weeks after his affair with his young lobbyist Vicky Eisman reemerged. A female lobbyist had been turning up with him at fundraisers, visiting his offices and accompanying him on a client's corporate jet. Convinced the relationship had become romantic, some of his top advisors intervened to protect the candidate from himself, instructing staff members to block the woman's access, privately warning her away from and repeatedly confronting him. Several people involved in the campaign said on the condition of anonymity. So, there was something going on there. 11, now, John McCain funded the London Bridge attack bomber. We just talked about that one. Number 12, McCain busted for being on Hillary's payroll to take out Trump. Huma Abedin is a Muslim Brotherhood agent who has managed to gain access to our White House through her work as Hillary Clinton's longtime aide. After Hillary's humiliating loss to Trump for the presidency, WikiLeaks exposed how the Hillary and Huma have been working in the shadows, involving some very powerful Republicans in an active coup to get Trump removed as president. We know there's a coup going on. Okay. There's an excerpt from one of the emails. JBCF and JK PACs will be noticeably silent for the rest of the campaign. Each will receive a significant allowance from advertising budget. HRC is in the loop and has talked to all three personally. Eyes only. But it doesn't end there. Anyway, in the first email, what it did is they lined the pockets of the super PACs of Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina, and John Kasich in order to buy their alliance against Trump. So that's why the JB, CF, JK PACs were all silent, because they were paid for. So you pretty much have what's going on there, okay? Black Lives Matter leader kept all donations. If you're familiar with the activist movement, not that long ago, the liberal media pushed an inspiring story of a homeless black woman who became one of the leading figures of the movement and was an important member of Black Lives Matter, organizing over 900 events and gathered millions of dollars in donations, which were allegedly for a good cause. These donations were supposed to help raise black men and women up in society. However, newest revelation suggests that Markeisha Johnson was not the humanitarian everybody thought she was. In fact, the donations she collected helped only herself to rise in society. A class action lawsuit stated that Johnson solicited donations from vulnerable people to help others, but instead used it to help herself. According to the document, the Black Lives Matter leading figure purchased a $1.2 million home for herself, but this is null. Instead of using the donations to help people, she also bought herself a brand new Range Rover, as well as some other exorbitances. Nevertheless, sadly, she will get away with it because it's most likely that the way she did it was perfectly legal. Namely, she used a GoFundMe campaign to ask for funds, and reportedly, the company is particularly bad at working with police to crack down on scammers. Allegedly, Markeisha Johnson was interrogated by the police, but she denied all accusations about missing the funds, and she refused to submit any records. She used the company platform in order to fill her pockets with money that weren't hers to take. This is more than just bad publicity for Black Lives Matter to have someone like this in their leading circles, while blacks across America continue to suffer poverty and gang culture. And that, my friends, is what's out there.
So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see, and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means, because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation, they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there?